Earlier today, the House of Representatives voted 224 to 202 to pass a gun control measure that nationalizes red flag laws. The passage of the federal extreme risk protection order came one day after the House voted 223 to 204 to pass a sweeping gun package that Democrats named the Protecting Our Kids Act. Now, this rolled 8 different bills into one. I will tell you, Republicans and Democrats could not be farther apart on a solution.
Today, Democrats in the House will pass the Protecting Our Kids Act, and we need the Senate to abolish the filibuster to do the same.
That was New York Democrat Mondaire Jones yesterday on the House floor. You see, nothing will get in their way of their agenda. Absolutely nothing. Well, Republicans like Greg Steube understand the real problem.
Why isn't the majority talking about solutions to have role models in our children's lives? Because that doesn't accomplish a political objective for them.
With me now to talk about how things have been unfolding on Capitol Hill over the issue of gun violence is Congressman Kevin Hern. He is a member of the House Committee on Ways and Means, and he serves as chair of the Republican Study Committee's Budget and Spending Task Force. He represents Oklahoma, their first congressional district. Congressman Hern, welcome back to the program.
Tony, it's always great to be with you, my friend.
So yesterday's vote came just hours after a House committee heard testimony from witnesses who were directly affected by the shooting in Uvalde, Texas. What do you think of how Democrats are using the latest shooting? Are they really pursuing solutions that will make children safe, or are they simply trying to advance a political agenda?
The unfortunate thing is they're using these tragic deaths done by people that are certainly of less mental capacity. I mean, no one can believe that these shooters are someone that are sane, and they're using these situations to advance what they've been trying to do for years, which is get rid of guns completely in the United States of America. That there's no question about it. When you talk to them privately, and if they don't get their way, you heard what the congressman from New York just said. They want to throw out all of government to make this happen. This is their mission. And the sad part about this will not solve the problem. We've got to address the mental illness in this country. I've actually talked to the police officers around Oklahoma and across this country, just as my colleague Tony Gonzalez has done down in Uvalde and other places. And they all will tell you that the issue they're dealing with every single day is the mental illness that they're seeing among the people they're capturing or getting them for breaking in places. We see it culminate in shooting from time to time, and they're tragic. There's nobody in America thinks that these are not tragic. But the reality is that we in government have the ability to pass legislation and to promote legislation that will actually get at the heart of this, need to work on the main thing, which is to go after the mental illness in our country and not try to attack the object of the guns.
I agree with you, Congressman, in part, but I would push actually a little further, because I think there's actually root causes to the mental illness in the instability that we see in these young men. A lot of times it is drugs, but it's also, when we look at a study of the young men who've been committing these heinous acts, 80% or more of them come from dysfunctional or broken homes. And these are issues not necessarily the government can address, but the government can quit being a problem in crowding out families and crowding out the faith community that really has solid solutions.
Well, and you're exactly right. And you mentioned I'm the budget chairman, was last year and again this year with the Republican Study Committee. The budget we put out last year was the most pro-life budget in the history of any budgets ever produced in Congress. This year is even more so, more pro-life, more pro-family, with 23 pro-life bills. You know, I have always been a promoter of strong families. I think that's the core of our problem. You heard my colleagues talk about it yesterday and today, about restoring the family unit, having examples in these young men and young women's lives to show them the right way, to help women who are single moms make sure that they're getting the proper help that they need to get help on, and raising children the way they should be raised in this country. And what you're seeing with these events, with these outrageous cries, if you will, from the Democrats about how we're destroying America and all that, all they're doing is continuing to create these heinous crimes to come forth. We know what Chuck Schumer did in front of the Supreme Court some 2 years ago, talking about Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch, and here we see what happened yesterday here. We've got to stop this narrative and get to solving problems in America. That's what the American voters are looking for, and that's why the House this fall we'll turn back to the Republicans, and we're going to be in charge. And we need to make sure we take this country back to the right place it needs to be.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the budget proposal, the Budget and Spending Task Force that you chair with the Republican Study Committee, because I think this is a very good exercise, because right now, as you said, the Democrats are in control, so this isn't going to see the light of day. But I do think it's very instructive, because I think this is putting it out to the American people what the priorities will be if the Republicans take control in the fall. So highlight some of the elements of this proposal that will address the issues you talked about in terms of the crowding out that's been taking place by the federal government when it comes to the family, when it comes to the faith community, and in many ways marginalizing those important elements of family formation and society as a whole.
Well, certainly in our budget, we look at Title 10, which is the funding from the federal government that goes to help for health clinics around the country that will not be used for abortions around this country. If you look at 73 million abortions since 1973, since the Roe v. Wade decision, and if you assume that half of those were men, half women, and each had a child, we're missing in this country some 100 million people in our country, a third again as large as our population. People that could be producing, could be families that could be growing our economy, people that be productive, that would care about the sanctity of life. And so in our bill, we talk about the heartbeat bill, that there are no abortions can be performed at heartbeat, at conception, at 15 weeks. We do everything we possibly can, that bills that have been created and submitted by members of Congress to protect life and protect family, all the way up until birth and after birth and beyond. And then when you look at this is really the impetus of, if you don't protect life, then you really don't have a country. And that's what you're playing my colleague Dan Bishop's statements on the floor. And that's exactly what he was talking about. If we don't get back to the core, who we are and what we are as a nation, we will have no nation.
Right. And one of the elements of the proposal is something that we've heard about for a long time. We addressed it somewhat during the Bush administration, but that is the marriage tax penalty. Because again, government in its fiscal policy and is discouraging the very thing that we need. And so you address that as well in your budget proposal.
We do. I've been in Congress 3.5 years. I sit on now the Ways and Means Tax Policies Writing Committee. So I'm doing that as well. And one of the things that Tax Cut and Jobs Act did with tax policy, it made it neutral. So it wasn't a penalty anymore. We've got to move beyond that to reward families to stay together, to work things out and take the tough decisions, show your children and your family members that, not everything is going to be great. And so that we can work together, keep the family units together, lower the divorce rates, stop the dependency on the federal government. I've seen that firsthand my entire life growing up. And the reality is we can do better. And then when you look at what's being taught in our schools, how our kids are being educated with the critical race theory, taught that they're racist from birth. I mean, who does that? But a nation that's trying to destroy the future and become a socialist nation, as the Democrats are putting forth. And we saw We saw a great tell on that in Virginia and changing that direction. And we're going to continue to move forward in that as well.
Congressman Hern, always great to see you. Appreciate your leadership on Capitol Hill, and thank you for coming on Washington Watch today.
Thanks, Tony. Have a great evening.
All right.